This episode of the Old Dogs REI Network is brought to you by Mino Studio.
In a world where jobs are how most people make money, one man, one desire, one challenge dares to break the mold. Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where we don't work for money. Money works for us. Coming soon. Viewer discretion advised.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network, where cash flow is king. Real estate investing, the means, so you can enjoy your retirement dreams. This is the show where we cut right to the chase. No sales pitch, no long monologues, just simple how-to real estate investing advice, so you can earn the passive income you need to enjoy your retirement today. And now, your host and chief old dog, Bill Manacero.
Welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network. I'm your host, Bill Manacero, and this is a show where 50-plussers and anyone else who wants to join us get solid, no sales pitch real estate investing advice to help generate real cash flow. This podcast airs twice weekly on Mondays and Fridays, and if you aren't already a subscriber, go to iTunes, type in Old Dog, spelled D-A-W-G, find our podcast and subscribe. Well, we've got a neat show for you today. This is a topic we really, we talk about all the time, but we really never have focused in on it for the show in general and just to really delve into it. But we're talking about hard money today. And I know you've heard the term a lot, when I first started real estate investing, I remember I thought hard money were coins and then the soft money was the dollar bills. But, later on I found out that wasn't right. Okay. So we're going to clear up any kind of misconceptions you might have on what hard money is. Our guest is a gentleman named Ryan G. Wright, and he is the CEO of DoHardMoney.com. Private hard money company that offers short-term funding for real estate investors. Ryan began his career in real estate at age 21, working in the mortgage industry. About 10 years ago, Ryan started investing in fix and flip properties. He saw that it was a difficult process to get funding quickly on these properties, much less from reputable, reliable sources. And this need prompted the founding of DoHardMoney.com. Ryan has been featured in numerous publications, including Fox Business Realtor, Utah Career Guide, the Deseret News, the Salt Lake Tribune, Utah Business Magazine, and Salt Lake Realtors. He's also been a featured guest on K-Talk 630 AM, The Voice of Utah. He also published 3 books and has been a featured speaker at numerous financial conferences. Ryan holds a bachelor's degree in marketing and management and was accepted into the prestigious MIT University Entrepreneurial Master Program. Other recognitions include the Real Estate Rookie of the Year from the Salt Lake Board of Realtors and the State of Utah's Young Entrepreneur Award in 1996. In his free time, Ryan enjoys boating and running several triathlons, with the largest being a half Ironman. So it's dying to hear about this. I also found out he skis too, so we're going to have to add that in there too. So Ryan, welcome to the Old Dogs REI Network.
Hey, Bill, thanks for having me. Boy, that sounds great, that intro. Thank you.
Well, there's a lot of good stuff there. I'm sure I could have had a lot more, but it's just it's pretty impressive for a young guy here, I'll tell you.
I'm an old dog at heart.
Well, we kind of sensed that, so we figured, we got to have you on the show here. So, but Ryan, this is a great area for us. We really haven't talked a lot about hard money, and so I'm looking forward to that. But first, let's tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got in this space, and you're also an investor too. So we're going to be talking about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I really had a choice in the matter. My my grandfather started investing in houses, back before it was popular, anybody knew about it. He ran a heating and air conditioning company, and he lived in Southern California, kind of your neck of the woods. And this was, 50, maybe more than that, 50 plus years ago. And he'd buy a house, he'd fix it up as he had time, and he'd sell it. Sometimes they'd move into it and fix it up over the course of a couple of years, and he'd sell it and make some money and do it again. And he probably flipped several dozen properties, maybe a dozen properties over his lifetime. But it was just that extra money that made the major difference in their life to be able to do multiple things in their older years, because they had extra money. They also did some rental properties and that stuff, and that kind of carried me in. My dad went to chiropractic school, was a doctor, and he started buying rental properties. He'd buy a duplex and, pay it off, and then buy another one and pay that off, and kind of low leverage type of a thing. And, it was just kind of in my blood. So I don't know if I really had a choice.
It doesn't sound like it there. Oh man. That's great though. Great background. You got little, flippers, you got buy and holds there. That's very cool.
Well, and I was the one doing lots of labor, so I grew up, cleaning my dad's places or painting them. And luckily, my grandfather moved up to Salt Lake. And so he would, he'd pick me up in the summers and take us. We'd do electrical. I got shocked so many times hitting a 12-volt wire and not knowing, and, those types of things. And anyway, I learned so much, which I didn't realize at the time how beneficial that would be later, to not get taken advantage of by a contractor, or, knowing the fundamentals. Like, I know how a house works. Now, I might not be the best person to lay the tile, but I've done it and I know how to do it, and you can't spoof one over on me.
That's great background to have, especially when you're flipping. You definitely got to know what's going on there, and just on the pricing side, and to hold your workers accountable, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Well, very cool. So, that's your real estate background, but then you got into banking, it sounds like, or at least into the financial part of things. Tell us about that.
Okay, so first off, I'm not a banker, so don't hold that against me.
You don't want that label
like
in there.
Well, so I mean, that's the point there really is most people in the hard money space can't come from the banking world. And I am like the only I know of that came from the investing world. You see, so I was a real estate investor. So I started out, I kind of grew up, with some rental properties and that stuff. And then I got my real estate license, and my wife and I bought our first duplex. And I started kind of following my dad's footsteps with the rental stuff. And then I started getting into flipping properties, but I was just too scared to do it myself. And so I would find a buyer and tell them they could buy the property, but they also had to sell. So I made 2 commissions and didn't take any risk. And then I also didn't have to work nights and weekends and, that type of stuff, being a counselor to people doing regular real estate deals, because it's so emotional. And so, so we did that. And then finally we did our first flips and continued to buy rental properties. But one of the biggest challenges that I found was money. We'd find a good deal, and we'd have to find somebody with cash that would fund that deal. And it's not like we had bad credit. We didn't have like amazing credit. And I had to find somebody that was willing to fund a deal based upon the merits of the property itself. And it was a continual problem, because we'd spend months finding a good deal. And then we'd, call a couple of guys we networked and found, and they'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that area. I heard something bad on the news there last night." And it's like, "Are you kidding me? I spent months finding it." Or, you'd find another property and he'd say, "Oh, you know what? I decided to put money into the stock market, and so I'm not going to do anything." And so it was so unreliable. And it took so much time and energy to find a good deal. That's really what prompted me to get into the money side of things.
Oh, interesting. Wow. And you were primarily starting out. Do you know how old you were when you bought your first investment property?
2002.
2002. And this is all primarily in Salt Lake or around that area, or did you go out of state?
Yeah, so we're now in 35 states. So I've got stuff all over. But we started in Utah, grew from there, went into Colorado, I think, next, and then Texas, and then kind of grew from there. We're currently not in all those states. There's regulatory changes and things like that. But it just kind of grew from there. What really happened to get the ball rolling on that is I had a client of mine that I helped him sell properties as an agent, and he lived out of the country. He was originally from Utah. And I'd sell a property, and a couple months later, he'd call me and have another one for me to sell. And we'd sell that one. And a couple months later, he'd have another one to sell. And then a couple months later, he'd have another one. He was an old dog, had a bunch of properties. And in the end, he come into town every year to check on us. And, one year he said, okay, I've liquidated everything I want to. I've got $3 million. We've been working on this for years. I know, you're credible and do what you say. And I got $3 million with your name on. What do you want to do with it? And, the light bulb went off, and I'm like, the biggest problem in investing is reliable capital. And if we could tell people what we'll do and what we won't do and stick to that, this thing will just go crazy. And that was kind of the start of the money lending, is using his capital and our resources. And we started building things from there to grow it into the enterprise that it is today.
Oh, that's interesting. So you, instead of using the funds to purchase your own properties, you started using his funds to actually lend out to others, right? Is that right?
Yeah. That's exactly right. It was kind of a model shift for us, and we still do investments, but yeah, the idea with that was the starting of the hard money lending, the anti-bank, where you knew what you were going to get, and it went like gangbusters.
Well, before we get too far here, I do want to zero in. There may be folks listening that aren't really familiar with hard money or what it is. How would you best define hard money?
Well, for people that aren't in the industry, they worry it's like kind of sleazy or, it's a bad word. But the origins of hard money is really quite simple. A hard money lender lends upon the hard assets, which is the property, where a soft money lender is lending on the soft assets, which is typically credit, income, debt to income ratio. Those things are soft intangibles. They're simply ratios, where a hard money lender is looking and saying, what's the raw assets? And so when we look at a property, we are primarily looking at the property alone. We don't really care about your job. We don't care about your debt to income ratio. We don't care about any of those things, or mildly care about them depending upon the situations. We put our weight into the property itself, which is the hard asset. And that's the idea with a hard money lender, is we lend based upon the hard asset. We're not concerned about the soft assets. And the soft things, that's what your traditional bank is worried about, right? They want to make sure you've got all these different things with your ratios and your payments and can you cover and all that type of stuff. And we are only worried about, is the property worth it? That's really what it comes down to for us.
Right. Do you actually have an appraisal done on the property, or do you just kind of calculate the value yourselves?
Yeah, great question. It's going to come down to the loan product. We have a variety of loan products. Some of them are going to require an appraisal, and some of them will require what we call evaluations, where we send two independent either appraisers or real estate brokers, and they do independent valuations and send us a report, and then we compare those against each other. And we're going to be conservative on values when you are a hard money lender and you're lending based upon the assets. You're lending based upon the property, the hard asset. Then we want to be conservative on that. So we're going to, make sure that we're using conservative values, but want to be realistic as well. A lot of new investors, fall in love with one comparable, and it may be the highest comparable in the neighborhood, and they overlook so many. So we tell people, start with the lowest fixed up, good condition properties and work your way up until you find three good comps. Look at actives, look at solds, compare both of those. And those lowest three that are, active or sold, move in ready, recent comparables, that's your value. That's really all there is to it. Don't start with the highest and work your way down.
Now, you have the advantage of having done a lot of different types of real estate investing, from flipping to, did you say, I'm not sure if you said you actually wholesaled or not, but
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got wholesaling, flipping, you've got your buy and hold. Who, as a real estate investor, who really is sort of the primary target or the primary user of hard money?
Yeah, most of the time it's a fix and flipper that's buying a property, fixing it up, and reselling it. Banks don't want to lend on that type of deal if they see that even if you can qualify for that loan with debt to income and everything else like that, they don't make enough money when they do a loan. And if you get a couple of those on your credit report, you sell quickly, or even one, they're not going to lend to you again. So you get into some troubles with that. The other thing that's a primary focus for us is people that want to buy a property, fix it up, and then do a refinance. Because a lot of investors have a hard time, getting a property when it needs a lot of work. But if it doesn't need a lot of work, there's not a lot of profit margin. So they'll come to us and, borrow the money, get the money for the rehab, fix it up, and then they'll do a takeout. And we actually have some, soft money, you could call it, which is less expensive than your typical hard money, but you don't have to have the same qualifications. So it's an in-betweener, and we can do some takeout financing as well with some other loan products that we have to get you into like a 5-year deal, but you don't have to have all the same qualifications. So there's that, or you can just go to your typical, Wells Fargo or whatever bank you want to use and do a takeout financing there. So there's lots of options. There's lots of tools in the tool belt depending upon what you're trying to achieve.
What is sort of the typical term? I know you mentioned there are different products there, but I mean, is it generally less than a year? Is it usually a 3-month deal, or is there something that's just more common depending on the product?
Yeah, I would say most of the fix and flip stuff is going to be less than a year. Our main product is going to be 5 to 8 months, and then you can do some extensions after that if you need to. That's just a really fix and flip, really, really fast deal. Some of the other stuff is going to be under a year, and then our longer term stuff, you're going to be anywhere from 2 to 5 years. If you're doing, I call it longer term. Really, it's it's a buy, renovate, and then rent. If you want to do a lease option or a rent to own, or just keep it in your own portfolio if you have, credit challenges, and then refinance to even a cheaper rate, down the road. So we've got stuff from 6 to 8 months to a year to 2 to 5 years, or kind of the different buckets, you could say, depending upon what your goals are.
Now, are you only lending on single-family homes? Do you lend on multifamily or commercial properties?
We don't. Our focus is really single family. We'll look at some things up to a 4-plex because that's considered single family. But, our sweet spot is a single family house. That's really our sweet spot.
Gotcha. Now, so if somebody buys a place, for example, or let's say they already own a place,
sure,
but they just want to do some improvements, and they, maybe they're not getting the cash out refi or whatever else they might be looking to get those funds. Do you ever have folks that come to you for those types, for construction or the upgrades, things like that?
Absolutely. Just to clarify one thing, we don't do anything, no primary residence. This is all investment. You can't live in the property. There's different regulations we have around that. So it's only investments. But yeah, we did a deal just recently. Maybe it's been a year, I can't remember, but it's up in Washington, and they had started the deal and used their own money and ran out of money, and they needed another $50,000 or $60,000 to, do the rest of the renovations. And so we did that deal. They fixed it up and, sold it and did really well on it. We've had other situations where somebody got into a hard money loan that was maybe pretty rough and needed to get out of it and still needed some more construction. And we can look at those types of deals as well, where we cash out that lender, do a whole new loan and get them some more capital. It really comes down to, when you're a hard money lender, it comes down to the values. Like there's got to be margin. The values have to be conservative. If that's the case, then we really have options.
Got it. What about qualifying for people? What do you look at? I know it's not like going to a bank and getting a loan. Do you have qualifications? If so, what are sort of the basic qualifications?
Yeah, out in the industry, I can speak to ourselves and then just kind of give you an overview of the industry. One of the things that's happening in the industry is there's, hedge fund money and that type of stuff that's flooding into the industry. And they are still operating on the traditional banking guidelines. You've got to have over a 680 FICO score. You've got to have, money in the bank for reserves. You've got to have, debt to incomes and those things. And so they're getting into the industry. They're bringing down some of those cost of funds, but they are still not a true hard money lender. So we have options like that. But your typical option is somebody, the only things we're going to care about is that there's the equity in the property. We want to be 70% of the after repaired value, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, but 70% of the after repaired value. So that property's worth 100,000. We want to be into it around that 70 mark, give or take. The other thing we're looking at is we want to make sure that you don't have any background problems. So, if you've got some problems on your background, some criminal records on your background, that's going to be concerning depending upon what it is. If you had a DUI from 10 years ago, not a big concern. But if you had one last week and the week before and the week before, big concern. So we do a background check because we want to make sure we're working with somebody that doesn't have a bunch of problems on their background. The other thing we're looking at is just judgments and, collections, stuff that could attach to the property. So we want to make sure that you don't have judgments, collections. You're not in the middle of a foreclosure. You're not in the middle of a bankruptcy or some time has passed with a bankruptcy. But pending those things, if you don't have those things and you've got the property, even if your FICO scores are 500, as long as you don't have a bunch of collections, then we've got options for you. So that's the idea of this whole hard money. It's just really focused on the hard asset.
So let's say, for example, I'm a guy, I found this property, it's going to need a lot of work, and I go to you, I say, look, I want to purchase this property. Can you guys help me with the purchase? I'll put in, 30%, what have you, to purchase it, but I'm also going to need money for construction too. How would you work with me in that situation? Would you take that kind of deal? And if so, what does it look like? Does your name go on the deed? What are some of the details on that? And how long does it take to actually process that?
Yeah, great questions. So, we'll do a deal depending upon which program, but we have some programs where we can fund 100% of your purchase and 100% of your rehab. So we don't need a bunch of money coming to the table as long as it fits a certain loan program. That's got to be under, say, $250,000 total combined loan amount. But we would want the purchase, the rehab, whatever our loan is, the better the deal you get, the more I can give you. So if you can get your purchase and rehab at 70% of the after repaired value, as long as you fit a few other small parameters in that program, we could lend that to you. And then you're just coming in with your payments and closing costs and that type of stuff. So that's a really attractive. That's kind of called our 100% financing program. That's very, very popular. So, we've got that program. If you want to bring some money, we can do deals where we'll fund 100% of your purchase and 50% of your rehab. And so you just have to come up with 50% of your rehab and closing costs and payments. And I can get you a little bit better pricing on something like that. So on either of those deals, if you found something, say you found a property for $100,000, it needed $30,000 worth of rehab, so $130,000 is what you needed. Let's say that property was worth $200,000 when it's fixed up, because a true hard money lender is going to lend on the after repaired value of the property. You'd be more than covered in something like that. So we could lend up to $140,000, and so we could lend your purchase and your rehab on that as long as it fits that 100% program. If not, we would fund, say, the $100,000 purchase and $15,000 of the rehab. You'd come up with $15,000 of the rehab, and then obviously some closing costs and payments. So a lot of options. We like to just look at every deal and let you know what the different types of options we have that can work best.
So I would think that since you're looking at after repair value, you're going to want to know real well exactly what they're going to do on the rehab, right? Because if they say they're putting in granite countertops and they're really end up putting in Formica, it's going to affect the value. I would imagine.
Absolutely.
How detailed do you get in that process?
Yeah, great question. So we have a full scope of work we want to have done from a licensed contractor that we're going to verify with, and then we have project managers that review that with the contractor and the borrower. So kind of the process that we do before we do values, we have a worksheet we send over to you where you break down line item by line item all the work you're doing to the property. And this is really important. This isn't just some stupid thing that a hard money lender wants you to do. It's really important because if you just go get a general contractor and they say, hey, I'll do this whole house for $50,000, and he writes it on the back of a napkin and signs it and you send it in to us, or any lender for that matter, that just doesn't work. So what we have is a detailed spreadsheet. It goes room by room, item by item. You say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And then we take that and we send that out to the appraiser, we send it out to our evaluators, and then they value the property based upon that work that you've already outlined. So that happens. And then from there, once the values come back, we get with our project managers. I don't know if licensed people that went to school for project management, and we've got different databases we can look at for different costs and labor costs and materials costs and all kinds of cool stuff there. And then we get with the contractor and the borrower and say, hey, I think you're too much in this or you're too little in this, and let's work through this together to make sure we're all on the same page. And then if that all looks good, then we can get into processing, and the values come in where we think, and the contractor bids all work out through our project management. Then we can get into processing and get it closed.
Do your project managers sort of check work in progress as well?
Yeah. So, and this is us, and I think you find most of the industry. So our project managers, we send out inspectors that actually go out there. So anytime you want to draw, if, we hold the funds for the rehab, and, you get a draw, and we send out an inspector. The cool thing is the work's done up front. So you've got line items, and you say, hey, we need a draw for item number 21, 57, 83. And so the inspector goes out there and says, are these things completed, takes pictures of it, does the report, sends it into the project manager. The project manager then, does the approval, and then funds get transferred to the contractor for payment. So it's a really, really slick process.
Yeah, that sounds like you've got definitely control over what's happening there. I'm sure there's folks that are listening too that want to know what kind of rates are out there in hard money. I'm sure it ranges, but can you give us at least a ballpark of sort of what we're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, we do deals as high as 6.5 points and 18% on the interest rate. And we do deals as low as 2 or 3 points and 10 or 12% on the interest rate. So again, it's going to depend if we're talking a soft money situation, if we're talking a whole bunch of money down and good credit, or if we're talking your traditional straight up hard money loan where it's just based upon the assets of the property with somebody that's got no experience and no money and some of those things. So you're going to have a pretty big range depending upon your circumstances. But one of the cool things that we do, we have a computer system that you can put it into, and it'll give you, a breakdown, a really good idea. And then you have the option of changing it. Oh, I want cheaper money. Okay, well, here's your options. Okay, I want longer term money. Okay, well, here's your options. I want to bring less down. Okay, here's your options. So it's really a factor of experience, credit, money down, and what loan amounts are, and then there's different programs we've put together. So we like to be able to give you options, but we'll tell you, hey, we can do this, and this is what it'll cost you. We can do this. We'll send you over a breakdown of it so you can look at it, go through it, and then you can make a determination on what to do.
And what's the shortest term that you'll have with a client?
Back in the day, we used to do some flash cash, what they call it, for a wholesale deal if they needed cash quickly to, do a wholesale deal transfer. And so we've done some of those. We don't do a lot of that anymore. I mean, we could consider looking at something. But most of the time, our people are getting like a 5-6 month loan and, getting the rehab done and then refinancing or getting it sold in that time, depending upon markets.
Got it. Sounds like you've already done quite a bit of funding and seen all types of cases out there. What would you say is one of the sort of biggest mistakes that folks make that go out and they're looking to fund a project, for example, and maybe it's on lending side, maybe it's on the it's on their side, in terms of how they approach the funding. But what would you say is like a common mistake or a problem that you see on a sort of a reoccurring basis with people seeking hard money?
Yeah, I got to give you two mistakes because they go hand in hand. The number one mistake we see day in, day out, regardless of experience level, is overvaluing the property. Time and time again, we see people. I've had deals as bad as, borrower thinks the property's worth $250 and the value's coming at $120. Literally, we get it. Now, it's not always that drastic, but we get two independent values. We look at those. We talk to the people in the area. We have boots on the ground that go look at the property, live within 10 miles of each property. We'll do or we won't do it. And so the overvaluing properties, getting excited about one, and the second one that's so tied to that is underestimating repair costs. thinking I'm going to go in there and, and put a coat of paint or, HGTV style, or go to IKEA and get some crappy cabinets and throw them in and think it's not going to cost much. So day in and day out, we see people overvaluing property and estimating the amount of repairs, and that's just a bad situation. It doesn't leave anybody in a good situation. I mean, in the end, we want to make sure you're making money, or we're not going to be making money. It's so expensive to take a property back and to deal with the problems, and all that type of stuff is just such an expensive endeavor.
So conversely, what would you say, the folks that do things right, what's some of the biggest successes in that regard?
Well, I think the guys that do it right are patient. They don't try and, make a bad deal work. They're patient, and they spend a lot of time in marketing and sales. So they're ones I think do it best use technology. And so they go out there and they say, okay, don't go after properties on the MLS for the most part, who has equity and who has motivation. So the divorce, bankruptcy, whatever the case is. So they match up the equity with the motivation, divorce, equity, HOA lien, whatever the case is, and then branch those together and then do some direct marketing, either through doing a skip trace and doing a voice broadcast or postcards or going knocking on the door. So I think the people that are doing it the best are using technology and marketing to spend their time. A lot of investors are going out there saying, I'll just wait for an agent to bring me a property. And that's just such a difficult way to find good deals. And I think the best guys are out there beating the streets, doing some marketing and being systematic about it. Hey, I'm going to spend X number of dollars to generate a new deal. And they're thinking of it like a business.
Have you had folks where you agree to an ARV that seems reasonable and likely and so forth, and of course your client as well, but the house is finished, they've done everything they wanted to do, but it's not selling?
Oh yeah, I mean that's just part of real estate, right? Real estate is problem solving. That's if you want to be a good real estate investor, you become a good real estate problem solver, and it really just comes down to solving problems. What's the next problem and how are we going to overcome it? And every problem is going to be different. Every deal is going to be different. But on average, our value that comes in, we're within 1.5% of what the actual sell price happens. Has been our average. Now there are some outliers. We've been under. Sometimes we've been under by $30,000, and sometimes we've been over by $30,000. So you do have the outliers, but as a median, you're looking at about a 1.5% differential, which is pretty freaking darn good. So we watch that, right? We want to know what that is. I mean, I've been in an area where a plant that had a lot of employees close down pretty unexpectedly, and you saw property values go down. So those types of things happen, but they don't happen a lot. And typically, if you've played your cards right and you're willing to, get out of it or sell it fast or not go down with the ship, that you can do fine. You might break even. You might make a little. You might lose a little, but that's pretty uncommon. The more difficult situation is where you've got somebody that's going to go down with a ship. We've got a good example in Texas. We did a loan to a lady. She thought the property was worth more than we did, and she would not lower the price. We ended up having to take the property back. We lowered the price, got it sold. She would have made money, if she would have lowered that price months ago, and if she wouldn't have been so prideful and just saying that's my number, I got to get it or else. And so you got to be fluid, and you've got to take everything as a learning experience. And really, it's I love your podcast name, because you got to get some gray hair, and that gray hair and experience pays off dividends. It's like going to school, and it pays off as you get more experience as deals come in.
Oh, you bet. Well, I was kind of curious too. Do you have certain clients, maybe repeat clients that you use that just sort of blow you away in terms of they're always, I mean, they're selling their homes quick, they're selling them at above what you estimate, and they're kind of doing this consistently. Do you have any folks that are sort of standouts that happens with? Yeah,
I mean, we've got some. I wouldn't say. Nobody is always selling it more than what we think. I've never seen that. But we have a lot of people that are, done a deal and made some money and come back and do another deal. The funnest ones for me is the guys doing their first deal. They're the hardest. You're going to be on the more expensive end of the prices and things we're talking. But, you come, you figure it out. We have some software and some tools and that type of stuff that we sell as well. And you use those things and you put it to work and you find that property and we close that first deal. That's amazing. So I love seeing people do their first deal. I got in this business because a guy took a chance on me. His name was Dan. And so I love being able to do that same thing, but it's hard because it takes a lot of work to find that first deal. And it's a roller coaster.
Are you seeing, over the last 10 years, you've been, in this industry, at least in the flipping side of it and so forth, are you seeing a change in the market in terms of maybe the ability to sell, or maybe the opportunities to buy? Any kind of change going on that you say currently is showing some indications in the economy there?
Yeah. The thing for me, I think real estate's localized. And so we were lending money during the 2008 crash, before it and after it and during it, frankly. So we have a really good feel for those things. The biggest thing I'd say as far as, markets is it's really localized. So you can have one area that you're struggling to sell houses, and you can have another area that they're flying off the shelves. You can have one area where construction's hot and another area that it's not. And that's really, it's localized. It's really nationally. Yes, you can tally it all up and come up with something, but there's always an opportunity. The way I tell people is, it's a scale. If they're easy to find, they're going to be harder to sell. If they're harder to find, they're going to be easier to sell. There's this inverse relationship. So you're always fighting one side or the other. You're either having a hard time finding, but you're going to have a really easy time selling, or you have an easy time finding, but you're going to have a hard time selling. So there's always this relationship. And so one of the things I really like to tell people is stay in that sub FHA price range, because the majority of home buyers that are out there are buying with an FHA loan. So you want your target price to be under FHA limits when you go to resell. And I don't care if it's the 1980s and interest rates go up to 28%, people were still getting FHA loans. Transactions were still happening. The ones that were happening were the best priced properties in the best condition. So if you're the cheapest house in the best condition, you're going to sell that property. And so you've got to be aware of those circumstances. But yes, I mean nationally, there's different things happening around the country depending upon where you are. In my local area, home sales are slowing down a little bit, but it's been so red hot. Values have surpassed the 2008 values if you're under $500,000. The $500,000 and above properties haven't even gotten to the 2008 prices, or 2007 prices, I should say. They haven't even gotten there. So, you've also, not only do you have this localized, or this, different areas of the country where things are happening, you also have differences in price ranges depending upon what buckets of range of prices you're actually playing in.
That's great information. Well, our audience are folks that are 50 plus in age. Some of them are still working, but they're approaching retirement. There's others that are already in retirement, and they're looking at real estate investing as a means for them to be able to either supplement their current income in retirement, or to be able to provide the kind of retirement that they really want to have for the rest of their lives. And what advice would you have for them? It's kind of a twofold question. One in the area of flipping and or going into that arena, or maybe taking out hard money loans for their efforts in launching it. What kind of advice would you have for them as considering their situation, that would realistically do to generate more income?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. The first thing I'll say, which is probably counterintuitive, and a lot of people would say I'm wrong on this, but don't quit your day job. That would be the first thing for me. And I'm not saying, you eventually may get to the point where it makes sense to, quit that. But I see a lot of people, they give up their job because, they're getting frustrated. They're tired of it. They're tired of the desk, that type of stuff. But it makes a good income. It takes care of the family and those things. Don't do that yet. There may come a day that you can do that, but don't do that now. I'm really a big fan. I think you've got, 3 different jobs to do. You've got job number 1 is to put food on the table. So you got to figure out a way to do that. Job number 2 is to accumulate some additional cash so that you can invest. And job number 3 is your long-term investment. So I look at everything in 3 different buckets. My long-term investment is my rental properties. That's going to pay me. So my goal with all those is get them all paid off. I'm not a high leverage guy. I don't like to take a lot of leverage. I do take leverage for short-term deals, but I don't take a lot of leverage on long-term deals. Then you've got your, put food on the table. I get a paycheck from being the CEO of this company, and that takes care of my kids and, puts them in school, and we get food on the table. But we try and live pretty modestly on that, because any additional money from the difference that I get, I put into this investment bucket. And that investment bucket I'm trying to grow so that I can then transfer some of that over to my long-term bucket to pay off property. So, I would probably say if you have no real estate, if you haven't done anything in real estate, I would probably start out doing some wholesale deals or maybe doing a retail deal. The nice thing about a wholesale deal is you can find the property, put it on a contract, and you can sell it to somebody else and make $5,000 or $10,000. I had a guy that made $25,000 just this last week or 2 weeks ago. So, and we actually help with that. So if you go find a property and you want someone to buy it, we have people that are looking for properties, and so we match the two up. Works really awesome. So, that's a great way. Make some cash. Okay, great. Now I got a little more cash to play with, and let's, maybe you do a few wholesale deals and then do a retail deal, do a fix up. And then if you've done a few fix-ups, you save the money, you do 3 or 4, deals, and maybe you can pay cash for a rental property or put a down payment on a rental property and go to Chase Bank and get a low interest loan and, put that down. Depending upon your area, it may not be a good time to buy rental properties in your area. If that's the case, keep flipping or keep wholesaling and just, hoard that cash. And then when it comes time, make those payments. But I think the ideal situation is to have paid off properties, a bunch of paid off properties. Now, some people leverage and want to have 20 or 30% down on each property and want to cash flow the difference, and that's a great strategy as well. It just depends on how risk adverse you are. So we typically, if we're going to leverage, we want to be less than 50%, but don't love the leverage in that long-term bucket, right? The long-term retirement bucket.
That's great advice. Great. Your company, it sounds like you're doing a lot of things right. You're doing some amazing things there. What's your view? You're a young guy, looking 10, 20 years down the road. What would you like your business to be in? And what really excites you about it today?
Well, I'm turning 40 this year, Bill, so
still got 10 years till the old dog status. So you're still a young pup here.
I got like a month. Actually, it's a month away. I'm the 19th of next month is my birthday. I'm like kind of freaking out about 40. So where do I want to? So let me answer the first question. What am I most excited about? I'm most excited about technology. We have built multiple software platforms that our customers use that are just amazing. So we have got some for finding properties, and we've got some for, valuing properties, and we've got some for analyzing deals and that stuff, red light, green light, that stuff that's just like making such a difference, especially if you're newer in the game. So I'm like stoked about that. So we're constantly modifying and making that better. And that's one of the big things we're trying to do is to bring some more tools that can take people to the next level faster, so they don't have to go through as many school of hard knocks. That's good and bad, because you've got to be teachable and willing to follow a system, or else it doesn't work. If you're kicking against the pricks all the time, it just doesn't work. So that's probably the thing I'm most excited about. The other thing, I mean, we just love seeing people do their first deal, and that's what gets me juiced. We had a video crew go out and film a lady, and it's her first deal, and she's like, I couldn't have done this without you. And I just feel like we can change people's financial futures, and it starts with that first deal. And that first deal is hard to do, and it takes a lot of work, but that's really gets me. That's why I get out of bed in the morning, is to see people do those first deals. It's not I don't need the money, so it's really about seeing those deals happen. It's just what gets me juiced.
That's neat. As you mentioned earlier, you're talking about how real estate really is a regional market. I mean, it's so different from market to market. Are there some areas that you'd say might be a little hotter than other areas in terms of being a great place to do flipping right now?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot in Chicago, or Illinois in general. We do a fair amount in Atlanta, Georgia. We do a fair amount in Ohio. We do a fair amount in, it's slipping my mind now, North Carolina, I think would probably be the other big one for us. But yeah, I mean, it's changing all the time. New Jersey is pretty hot right now as well. So, but again, hot, what does that mean? It means you're selling properties, pretty quickly, and but that means it's hard to find them. So you got to spend more time finding them. So it really depends on your strategy and what you're trying to do.
Gotcha. Our time's just been zipping by here. It's a shame because this is all great information, Ryan. It's been fantastic. We are, as we approach near the end of the podcast here, though, we have a thing we call Wrap It Up, where I ask you a series of quick questions so that you can share resources with our listeners that you have found helpful for yourself. So if you are ready, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Let's do it.
All right, let's start with the first one. Favorite real estate book?
I'd have to say I like a lot of real estate books, but one of the ones that I think made a difference in my life was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I remember my mom reading it at night when it first came out. I was probably 16 or 17, if I remember right. And that kind of put some changes in their parental style that I think really put me on a track that I'm really grateful for.
Oh, that's great. How about a favorite, just general business book?
I'm like I say, I'm old school. I got an old heart. I'm going to go with Napoleon Hill, Master the Key of Riches, or Master the Key of Riches, I think is the name of it. It's a fantastic book on that'll change your life.
Oh, that's great. Good recommendation. How about most valuable website for success? Of course, other than your own.
Yeah, I would have to say, I hope you don't think this is a cop-out, but Google Suite is so freaking powerful, and I've never understood the how powerful it is until this year. Between Sheets and between keeping all your information in one place and data storage and everything else. And if you're getting into real estate, you've got to have a place to file everything and keep everything and search everything. And it is so remarkable. We're replacing $10,000 and $20,000 servers to just use Google Suites, and it's amazing. I love it. You can share stuff with your wife, and have the same folders and put your birth certificates on. If you're not utilizing it, there's so much to be had there, and you can do it for free for the most part, unless you want a more secure and more storage.
That's great. That's a great recommendation. How about a favorite app, something on your phone that you really think is helpful in what you do every day?
I've got several, but the one I'll throw out is it's called LastPass, LastPass. I love it because you have it on your computer and you have it on your phone, and it stores all your passwords for you, and it will only let you log in if it's a recognized site. So all this, hacking and getting your passwords, which is becoming more and more prevalent, especially in real estate investing. I mean, we've dealt with situations like this this year. I love that because you can keep all your passwords. It'll assign a really complicated password, and you've got them all on your phone, you've got them all on your computer, and it's all secure and will keep you out of trouble and make it simple.
That's great. But you're not nervous that people are going to hack into that, huh? And get all your passwords?
Yeah. So the cool thing about it is that they have text messaging. So if you're going from a different IP address, it actually sends a text message. So it'll only let you in from a recognized IP address. It'll only let you recognize if you're in the country unless you set the settings. So really cool stuff with that. Now with technology, I know, it knows where I'm at. And if it's a different IP address, it sends a text message, and you've got to validate through text message.
Very cool. Very cool. How about favorite quote?
I've got a few, but this one's right in front of me. It's a poem. It's just a tad longer, but I think it's worth sharing. This is called "It Couldn't Be Done." Somebody said it couldn't be done, but with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he wouldn't be one to say so till he tried. So he buckled right in with a trace of a grin on his face. If there's fear, he hid it, and he started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Somebody scoffed, "Oh, you'll never do that. At least no one else has ever done it." But he took off his coat, and he took off his hat, and the first thing you knowed, he begun it. With a lift of the chin and a bit of a grin, without any doubt or quit it, he started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. There are thousands to tell you it cannot be done. There are thousands to prophesy failure. There are thousands to point out one by one the dangers that wait to assail you. But just buckle in with a bit of a grin and take off your coat and go to it, and start to sing as you tackle the thing that couldn't be done, and you'll do it.
Wow. That is I felt like I just took a trip to Dr. Seuss Land. That was, that's a great little, I'm going to try to put the whole thing in there in our show notes here, or find a link to it if it's online somewhere. But that's great. And I think that's the kind of stuff that you can never have enough of, especially in real estate, where it's sometimes you can get so discouraged. You're turned down for a loan or a property problem or tenant problem, or, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of good stuff too. But I think it's important to know that, if you stick with it and you keep moving forward, you're going to do well. So that's a great one. What's it called?
It Couldn't Be Done.
It Couldn't Be
by
Done.
Edgar Albert Guest. It's an oldie. You'll find it online. I require my boys to memorize this one.
I love it. That is very cool. And our final question in the wrap it up section here. If you lost everything, all your assets, everything, all you have in your hand is $1,000 in cash. What would you do with that $1,000 to try to relaunch and rebuild your business?
I would buy a targeted list of properties that have equity, that have divorce, vacancy, bankruptcy, involuntary liens, and I would go knock on all their doors.
Wholesale for the most part?
You need cash. Well, so the first thing I do is get a job. And then I would go, in the evenings and go knock on doors, or on the weekends and knock on these doors, spend the $1,000 to do that. So I've got good. So now I know I'm in front of somebody that has motivation and equity. And so it's just a matter of time before I find a deal. And then, I would either flip that deal, just wholesale it, find somebody else that would take over that position, or joint venture with them. Or I would even, I'd maybe even retail it. I probably want a little more cash before I retailed it. But getting a qualified list of people have motivation and equity, and working that list, knocking on doors, would be my play.
That's great. Well, we are pretty much at the end of the interview today. I'm sure there's a lot of folks listening that would like to know more about you, about your company, and your services. What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you?
Yeah, visit our website. So I put a little page together where you can get my book, one of my books you can download for free if you want the digital copy. It's dohardmoney.com, DOHARDMONEY.com /old-dog, DAWG. And so you can download the most powerful secrets to getting a deal done, or one of my books there, and get a free copy of that. And we'd love to help you.
Oh, that's great. And they'll have access to your full website and all the information there. So great.
Absolutely.
Great. Awesome. Well, Ryan, we're at the end here. And as you know, there is just a time-honored tradition that we do here at the Old Dogs REI Network. And our guests just get this amazing opportunity to be able to just show us their best old hound dog howl. So, Ryan, if you are ready, we are ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's go for it.
Ow!
All right, you did it. You made it through.
Call, I think, but...
Hey, it worked. It was very good, very good. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. It's really been a blast having you on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Bill.
No, it's our pleasure. And I also want to thank all our Old Dog listeners out there as well for joining us. I know there's a lot of other things you could be doing right now, but the fact that you've taken the time to join us means a lot, and we really appreciate it. Please note everything we talked about here, including the links and resources that Ryan shared with us. It's all in our show notes, which are located at the Old Dogs website at olddogsreinetwork.com/blog. And you are going to look for the episode. It's our first hard money episode here, but featuring Ryan G. Wright. So you'll be looking for that episode. Well, that's the show for today. Remember, cash flow is king and real estate investing the means. Until next time, keep moving forward, and may God bless.
Thank you very much for visiting the Old Dogs REI Network. We would greatly appreciate if you would stop by iTunes and let us know what you think of the show. We would love if you could subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. The more ratings and reviews we receive, the more visible the podcast will be to others. Thank you.